The Empire of Izmir has long been a divided land, ruled by the mages, an elite group of magic users. The lowly commoners, those without magic, are little more than slaves. Izmir's young empress, Savina, wishes equality and prosperity for all. But the evil mage, Profion, has other intentions.
Welcome to Now Playing Podcast's Dungeons & Dragons Movie Retrospective Series.
Adventure, battle, glory beyond your wildest imagination.
Part of our board game movie retrospective series.
You want to play, do you?
Yeah, let's play.
We're gonna need a team.
Team? Who's gonna help us out?
Hosted by Arnie.
The fact that you see good in me makes me believe that there might just be some in there.
Justin.
See that there? I knew that boy had talent.
And Stuart.
You use magic. We are part of it.
But be warned, this episode will contain detailed plot spoilers and strong language.
There might be a loss of distinction between reality and fantasy, and possibly the loss of life in the process.
We hope you enjoy the show.
Let the journey begin.
Today we're discussing Dungeons & Dragons, starring Justin Whalin, Marlon Wayans, Thora Birch, Zoe McClellan, Kristen Wilson, Lee Arnenberg, with Bruce Payne and Jeremy Irons. That's right, Bruce Payne gets a whiff. I don't know. Directed by Courtney Solomon. You use podcasting, but I am part of it. This is Arnie.
And Stuart.
And who the hell am I? I'm Justin.
Well, it took 25 years or more to get the real D&D movie, but I'm presuming that what we're here to talk about today was made by the fans, not the haters and the people that were worried that their kids were going to fall into delusion.
Correct. This is a big D&D fan who's making this film, Courtney Solomon, who right out of film school contacted TSR, who was publishing Dungeons & Dragons, claimed he was working on a school economics project, and they told him other studios had tried and failed to produce a film based on the game. There'd been a lot of big names that had floated around doing a D&D movie in the 80s. Lucas and Spielberg were a couple of those names that floated, but nothing happened. And it took this director 18 months to convince TSR to finally negotiate selling him the royalties to this game. Now, he's not with a studio. He's not with anyone. He's himself out of film school and coming up with the upfront royalty to pay to make a Dungeons & Dragons movie.
Yeah, this is really weird. This is essentially someone hijacking Hollywood, right? This should have been a big budget movie, but instead, because I just want to reflect, it is 2000. Is anyone really playing Dungeons & Dragons anymore? I mean, I know yes. The answer, of course, is yes. But that property was way cooled off by this point. And you're telling me that they essentially, TSR just basically let some kid take the rights, thinking that it would never get made and they could make a couple bucks off of it. But somehow he did get it made.
Well, not necessarily. First of all, he started this back in 1990. So we're dealing with that time difference. It took him a decade between when he first contacted TSR and when this film came out. But also, the answer is absolutely yes. Role-playing games were huge in the 90s. I did a lot of role-playing games in the 90s. There were D&D groups that lined up to rent space at the gaming store in Springfield. Now, I think Warhammer 40K was kind of overtaking a lot of the popularity of D&D, but to this day, Hasbro, which bought TSR, cites Dungeons & Dragons and their role-playing division as one of their greatest profit makers. So while we may not be traveling in the D&D circles, doesn't mean D&D is not popular.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Again, I concede and did attend some of those said backroom comic book meetings. But A, there was a lot of role-playing games. It wasn't just Dungeons and Dragons. And two, the heat, the excitement about D&D specifically is long past, right? Like those that like it, play it. But this would have a whole lot more relevance if this were coming out in 1990 than the year 2000.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the cultural touchstone that it once was, right? But I do see it as an evergreen property. I mean, I don't think Dungeons and Dragons is ever going to fade away. But yeah, I get what you're saying, Stuart. It's not something being talked about at the dinner table over the nightly news anymore at this point.
Which is probably why he could get the rights, right? Is why he could probably finagle the rights to something because all the big players had moved on. And so, again, 1990s, not a great decade for fantasy cinema. Not a lot going on. We're right before Peter Jackson and the whole revolution of bringing back Swords and Sandals pictures of the 2000s. I guess you could call this the kickoff, or you could call it the last crappy 90s effort until someone figured it out.
Oh, you've got Xena Warrior Princess going on around this time, right?
Yes, exactly. That's what this feels like.
Yeah, I mean, the 90s were kind of dark for fantasy films. I think the biggest one I'm aware of is early 90s Beastmaster 2, but...
Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah, I like ferrets, but come on, man. Nobody was watching Beastmaster 2.
That was always on in my dorm rooms. I can't explain it. But yeah, he got the rights and then turned around and started trying to sell the international rights so that he could actually give them the money he promised. And he had planned this to be a $100 million studio project. He talked to Francis Ford Coppola. He talked to Rennie Harlin. He talked to Stan Winston. He even talked to James Cameron, who almost did this and then went, I think I'll go make that boat movie Titanic instead.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, yes, lots of people, this is a way of making your big fantasy epic. If you were ever going to do that, they all passed because there was a better proposition. And so what you're telling me is he couldn't find anyone better than himself to make it for a fraction of what he hoped?
Pretty much, yeah. It almost didn't even become a movie. What happened was, in 1997, mega producer Joel Silver got involved, probably through the Rennie Harlin connection, or maybe that's why Rennie Harlin was approached, but he wanted to make this a TV series. You mentioned Xena and Hercules. He saw Dungeons and Dragons as a TV series instead of a film, and then that became almost a legal battle because TSR's like, we didn't sell you the rights to a TV series. We sold you the rights to a movie, and your rights are almost up. So then it became, what money do we have on hand? They were going to do this for about $3 million direct to video.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And Solomon's like, well, everybody else passed. I went to film school. I'm going to direct this. And my good friend Justin Whalin is going to star. Justin Whalin had been planned to star in this for quite some time. He and Solomon were friends. Justin Whalin, who I know primarily from being Jimmy Olsen on the Lois and Clark ABC television series, the Superman one.
This is your star?
He had turned down other film roles because Solomon kept saying, you're going to be the lead in my D&D project.
Yeah, he was also the kid in Child's Play 3.
Yeah, I couldn't pick him out of a lineup, but he just has that face of mid-90s sitcom next-door neighbor friend.
No movie for you.
Yeah, I think after this, he rolled a snake eyes on his D&D dice and his career never recovered.
Hard to imagine.
Well, what ended up happening is Solomon did a test battle scene, and Joel Silver got so excited that he went out and got $30 million for this and turned it from a $3 million direct-to-video film, which TSR was planning on suing over, saying that's not a real movie, that's not what we agreed to a $35 million film that would go into theaters.
And crash and burn. All I knew about this movie was that it had been an epic flop around Christmas, the year 2000. It was a seasonal film and didn't even grossed the modest budget that it had, $15 million in the U.S., another 15 or so internationally, and the trailers look bad. I didn't know anyone that saw it. I stayed away.
There couldn't have been much of a marketing budget because I don't remember seeing anything about this back then.
Jeremy Irons was heavily.
I knew this was coming out, and I certainly wasn't going to go see it in theaters, but with Justin Whalin as the lead, that was a draw for me. And then having Marlon Wayans as the second. At the same time of filming this, he was flying between Prague, where this was filmed, and New York City, where Requiem for a Dream was being filmed simultaneously. Could you imagine the whiplash tonally of between those two films? But because I'd seen Requiem for a Dream, I really liked Marlon Wayans coming out of that.
Oh my.
So I rented this when it was new on DVD back in the day. I didn't have much of a memory of it at all, though. I just remembered I had seen it, and those guys starred in it, but I couldn't have told you anything about the plot. I couldn't even give you an impression of what I thought about it. It has been 24 years.
Well, last week you told us not so bad as how you pitched it. It was not as bad as its reputation would have you to believe.
Yeah, I didn't retch at it. I didn't have such a strong negative reaction that it stayed with me. And yet that's what its reputation is that this is completely toxic.
Yes. I'm not going to be challenging that reputation.
I mean, it surprises me a little bit that this wasn't on my radar at all, because with somebody like Marlon Wayans, I mean, he was pretty decently sized. At least the Wayans brothers were, right? I was aware of I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, and In Living Color, right? So, I mean, that was pretty big around this time, or maybe on the downside of it.
I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker is always going to be a classic Wayans film that he cameoed in just because he was related to them. He was barely on In Living Color. It was like right at the end. He, at this point, was primarily known for having the spin-off like sitcom The Wayans Brothers that he did with Sean.
Tim Burton cast him as Robin and then didn't get him into the movie.
Yeah.
Always a bridesmaid, it sounds like.
Yeah, I guess. I ain't going to the wedding though. Yeah.
But somehow Jeremy Irons got roped into this.
Yeah.
Look, Jeremy Irons would be the one thing you could pitch at me to make me go, okay, maybe. But he was featured heavily in the ads, and it looked bad for him. I think that he had talked about the fact that he had made a Lolita adaptation that kind of put a kibosh on his career, and he had been working for years. So I think, even though he is an Oscar-winning actor with a load of talent, he needed money, and that's why he's here.
Well, he worked pretty consistently. I mean, he was in Man in the Iron Mask, but he ended up buying a castle.
Hope it looks better than the one in this movie.
You needed to put in a pool or a moat.
I guess he was renovating this castle. It's a Ballydebob castle named Kilco or Kilso or something like that. He needed money. He was renovating a castle. He needed money. And so he agreed to do this for what? A week at most he was here?
Yeah, I can't decide whether I want what he's on or what Thora Birch is on in this movie. Like, I either want to be zonked out of my mind or waving my hands around going, I love it!
Yeah, Thora Birch did this coming right off of American Beauty. She said she just wanted something easy to do. She didn't want to be put through the emotional ringer again, so she just took this.
Emotional ringer? I'm going to call her Thorazine Birch. I mean, are you alive?
Yeah, she is really bad in this, and I expected better from her coming from that movie.
Yeah, she's given good performances, and then she's given this.
But you say the castle looks bad. A lot of this was shot on actual locations in Prague. There were very few sets and some blue screen stuff, but a lot of this is castles and rooms and things in Prague. Like Jeremy Irons' lair here with all the bones around, those are actual human bones of people who died during the plague. They called it the Bone Chapel in Prague. And they were the first film allowed to film in that.
Yeah, it's the ossuary. I've been there. Okay. Yeah, I'm not talking about that per se. I'm talking about the heavily CGI work that goes into this movie.
Almost imperceptible, if I do say so.
Oh my, yeah, I mean, how did you tell?
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell them the plot, and I'll tell you why I think Dungeons & Dragons belongs in the dungeon.
There is strife in the kingdom of Izmir. The young Empress Savina, played by Thora Birch, I will now call her only that, wants equality for all in her kingdom. Jeremy Irons' bad guy Profian, which may be what Birch is on, that does sound like a psych drug.
Yeah, it sounds like a party drug, doesn't it? Woo! Release me!
I don't know, I just think like Profian can cause erectile dysfunction and incontinence and sleeplessness, and if you get a rash in your taint, see your doctor and immediately stop use of Profian. Anyway, Jeremy Irons' bad guy Profian is a mage who opposes Savina and wants to take from her the scepter that allows her to control gold dragons. The other mages are lining up behind Profian, and a war is going to start between the mages and the Empress. To try and tilt the scales in his favor, Profian sends his henchman Damodar, played by Bruce Payne, to try and find the red rod that gives the bearer control over red dragons. Damodar infiltrates the kingdom's library to get the map that reveals the location of the rod, but at that same moment, two thieves, Ridley, played by Justin Whalin, and Snails, played by Marlon Wayans, have snuck into the library to rob the mages. The thieves are caught by apprentice mage Marina, played by Zoe McClellan. Through more luck than skill, Marina and the thieves foil Damodar's plan, and the three escape with the map. The three decide they must get the rod before Damodar, so they convince dwarf Elwood, played by Lee Arnenberg, to join their quest. To get the rod, they need a magic key called the Eye of the Dragon, which is in the center of a maze ruled by Xylus, the leader of the thieves, played by Richard O'Brien. Ridley survives the maze and retrieves the eye, but they are betrayed by Xylus. Damodar comes and he gets the map and takes Marina hostage. Snails, Ridley, and Elwood are joined by Norda, an elf tracker who works for the Empress, played by Kristen Wilson. Norda helps the group find Damodar. They go and get the map back and free Marina, but Damodar beats Snails in combat and kills the thief. The rest of the group continue on and get the rod. Damodar then just takes it from them and gives it to Profian. War has broken out in the kingdom, with the Empress's gold dragons attacking the mages, but now Profian calls the red dragons to their aid and the Empress seems doomed. Ridley and the others come to the Empress's aid. Profian betrays Damodar, throwing him off the tower to his death. Then Ridley and Profian have a sword fight. Ridley is victorious and takes the red rod. The Empress then has a gold dragon eat Profian. And we end with Ridley, Elwood, Norda, and Marina at Snails' grave, but his grave marker disintegrates and Norda tells Ridley Snails awaits him as the foursome teleport away, and credits roll.
All right, we heard a lot of colorful names in that plot summary. I'm not sure I heard a story.
This is the problem with Dungeons & Dragons and fantasy films in general, is I often, again, feel like an ass reading all of this lore and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And this movie is made by D&D fans who want to adhere to D&D lore, with gold dragons being different than red dragons. In fact, they were so afraid of continuity guffaws, they created the Kingdom of Izmir so that they weren't using any lands from any of the mini campaign books or anything, and that it wouldn't conflict with other people's games.
Right. Yes. The game campaigns would essentially be filled with, different kinds of characters, breaking into things, battling. But one thing that became clear to me really early on is they don't really have a story, right? You're just meant to go into a dungeon, battle things, get your questy thing on, and that's the end of it, right? Like characterization, that has to be added by filmmakers.
Well, I would say the best role-playing game people bring characterization to their characters, and the best dungeon masters create the story. The dungeon masters, either using the role-playing guides or with their own imagination, write the stories to put the players through.
Okay, the story here is, as far as I can boil it down using whatever magic spell is in this bag, this is about civil rights. We live in a land where there are mages and common folk, and the mages, because they have magical powers, enslave the common folk, and it's just not fair. And I guess we're supposed to identify with the enslaved and want to be free?
Yes.
What I know is in this opening, which the director bragged, I will say, that the first 60 seconds of this film took 4 months to get the flying, sweeping shots in the computer and everything. And then we're introduced to Jeremy Irons, and Jeremy Irons is acting evil. So if Thora Birch's Empress Savina opposes him, then we should be on her side, I guess. However, I will say that midway through this movie, I started asking, what if Savina is actually really inept and the mages are trying to save the kingdom? We don't really see these common folk who she says should be elevated. We don't have any plans for this. I won't even say she talks a good game. She talks a game about giving people equality, but
monotone. I love everybody.
I mean, we see commoners as cannon fodder and background characters, but we don't see these commoners, chanting her name and adoring her or anything like that. There is a disconnect between the people in the tower and the people in the streets that this story is trying to tell us are the main idea that we need to be set on a quest.
And I want to just dial it back. I just want to be sure that I heard this correctly. The money shot is this opening?
Yeah.
I mean, it took my breath away. I haven't seen CGI this bad. I don't know what's worse, the CGI coming into the castle or the practical effects, the cogs that look like they're about to fall off onto the people cranking the door open. Woof.
How about the rod on the gyroscope that was just literally glue gunned on there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeremy Irons looks like he's melting down his Oscar statue.
That gyroscope was a CGI effect because they couldn't get the practical gyroscope working the day of. And yeah, we see Jeremy Irons grasping something and trying to get a gold dragon under his control. Or is that After Dark's Flying Toasters dragon version? I mean, that dragon... You know what? I'm not gonna harp on the effects because that's low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
The effects in this are shit. But when they drop the door on the dragon's head, the blood coming out of the dragon doesn't even necessarily match the plane of which the ground is flowing on. I mean...
Yeah, it's kind of floating over it.
It is bad.
Special effects wise, we're in an era where polygon counts are able to be done and you're able to make good looking CGI. I mean, we are several years past Jurassic Park at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. T-1000. Yep.
Yeah, it comes down to budget at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
They probably bought models for some of these things and rendered them on the machines that they could get their hands on. And what we're seeing is, shiny, dull, and soft-edged creatures.
I mean, The Phantom Menace came out over a year before this. The Matrix came out earlier still, both of which had amazing CG work, and The Matrix was kind of an underdog by comparison. And here, this stuff, I was thinking so much of American Werewolf in Paris, which we just reviewed, and had those really, really awful CGI werewolves, and that was 3 years before this. This is about on par with that movie.
Yeah, what it reminds me of is, you've already mentioned it, Xena. Syndicated television level effects, which some people must have liked because those shows were always on. I could not stand them. I could not make it through 5 minutes of any of those shows. And yes, I know Bruce Campbell was even on one of them. Doesn't matter. I'm never watching it. So awful to me. It's just like poison. But okay, give it that it has bad CGI. Everything here is bad, technically. When do lips match the dialogue? The sync work on this. I swear to God, they have sweeping shots where people turn and look into the camera as it passes them. This is, yes, by a film student, it feels like a film school project. It feels like somebody that filmed their LARP friends and then tried to use Video Toaster to make it legit.
I did not notice the lip sync issue
Oh, God.
I watched this on the Blu-ray that came out. I noticed that it was a crap transfer. The digital noise was all over the place. I don't even blame the filmmakers for this. Whoever put that on a disc gave no fucks. But
right.
I didn't notice a lip sync issue. I think overall, now this is going to be a ballsy statement, but I think one of the best things about this movie is the camera work. I think that this is lit well.
No.
I think that there's good use of shadow in here. I think that the cinematographer, Douglas Milsom, brought more skill to this movie than hardly anybody else involved with it.
That may be, but I'm not going to praise it.
For the most part, his subjects are centered in the frame most of the time. You know, credit where credit's due.
I mean, I just think there's a lot of practical locations going on here, and he's using them well. It's bringing a lot of production value that this movie doesn't have. Unfortunately, it's marred a lot of the time by these bad CG effects that just rob the places of any majesty. I could get lost in that bone chapel if there wasn't a big blue screen wall with a bad CGI dragon in it.
This is what I mean. You're saying that they used real locations. It feels like no actor was ever on the same stage as another. There's so much blue screen on this. Always they're standing on rear projection.
I don't think as much as you might think, because, I mean, they didn't have the money for all of it.
Then they've done a masterful job of making real locations look like CGI shit.
I mean, I will side with Arnie a bit on this. Like, it does feel like they're in a real place, especially early on when they're in whatever town Izmir is. You know, they're running through alleys, through cobblestone streets, and they're in a grand library of the mage. And there's even a shot of the Council of Mages that looks like they snuck into, like, Turkish Parliament to shoot there or something with the marble floors.
That didn't look real to me. Yeah, when we see all those opera boxes and everything, that just feels like somebody made that on a computer.
See, I'm liking the way this looks. The other thing I'm liking, the score of this. I think that this music is better than this movie deserves. Its main anthem of bum 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 bum. I've had that in my head for days now. I've gotten the soundtrack for this. I really think that this is a great cinematic anthem for a shit film.
I mean, I'll also give it the compliment of the costuming is done well as well.
Oof. No. I swear to God, Domodor is like wearing like a curtain rod at some point. No, all of this looks like LARP to me. It looks like people that spend a lot of their money to make themselves look cool. It would be cool if like this was you and your friends out there doing a campaign, but this is supposed to be a Hollywood movie. And I would use the word shocking. I was not prepared for how bad it would look. And I don't think Jeremy Irons was prepared for how bad he would look in this opening. Now, he will disappear for most of the movie. I'm grateful that he does his bit here and goes away. But basically, he's here to set up the idea that he wants a power grab, and he sows doubt with the empress because she wants people and wizards to, be as one. He can get some of these council people to talk about taking away her scepter. He can't make a scepter that can control dragons, but he can have hers taken away in 3 days or something like that.
Now, you said this is a Hollywood production. I want to argue against that. This is not a Hollywood production. When this was released, it was considered the most expensive indie film of all time.
Okay.
It was not made by New Line. It was bought by New Line for, again, this movie cost between $35 and $45 million to make.
Mm-hmm.
New Line got to pay them $5 million for domestic rights. They got this cheap.
Yeah. And still lost money.
Despite Joel Silver producing, this is an indie film, not a studio film. So take it for what you will with that. But yes, Jeremy Irons looks real. His dragon does not. And there's an argument over a scepter that he wants to get from the Empress, Savina, who, from what I can tell, is like locked away from her people anyway. It's going to be a while before we get her. She's not down among the people. She's not mingling with the mages. I don't know what she does, but she does not seem accessible. Again, I'm kind of team mage here.
Yeah, she seems to spend most of her time walking around a church at the top of a huge tower talking to one of her mages.
Yeah, well, there's not many mages to hang with. Again, this cast is paltry. When we get quote-unquote crowd scenes, there's never more than like 10 people in the shot.
But we also get to meet our thieves down on the ground, Snails and Ridley.
Yeah, they're marveling at the river that's on fire right in front of them. Like you said, Arnie, some good light work, I mean, I know they're not looking at actual fire, but they're getting some shadows on their faces that makes me believe that they are standing above it.
They are the commoners that are supposedly going to be equal, but what I'm hearing is that they have a hatred for mages, and that's why they target breaking into the magic school. They want to specifically hurt magic users because they think they're better than them. This is some kind of sharks versus jets.
And I'm going to say from the get-go, Justin Whalin and Marlon Wayans have good chemistry with each other here. They are fun to watch on screen.
Okay, let's dial into that real quick and real fast. If you were going to make a Dungeons & Dragons movie, would you cast Eddie Murphy?
Yes, Eddie Murphy is bank. I would cast Eddie Murphy in Shakespeare if Eddie Murphy would agree to do it.
You would? Okay. I feel like that really is inappropriate for a vibe that I would think that they would go for. I feel like Marlon Wayans sticks out so badly in this movie. The flirting, all his Eddie Murphy-isms are so wrong for the vibe. It's a killer.
I would think that in such a hard sell as a Dungeons & Dragons movie, to appeal to those who aren't in those back rooms of the game stores playing the game, you want accessibility. You want relatability. I think Marlon Wayans and Justin Whalin bring that.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in our modern sensibilities, right, we're looking at this and bringing Game of Thrones with us, right? We're looking for great dramatic acting, and any jokiness is not necessarily written for the modern sensibilities, but it took me a few minutes to get into it, but I'm kind of with Arnie here. Like, I'm kind of looking at this as more of like a Mel Brooks History of the World type of thing, where it's a costume drama with some modern day funniness going on.
Okay. You think it's a comedy?
To some degree.
Yeah, I do. I think it's an action comedy film, and Marlon Wayans is the one bringing the funny.
Yes, he's been tasked with that anyway. I don't like this stuff. I think it should be out of the picture. They're terrible leads, in my opinion. And again, I can't get over the fact that when they're talking, their mouths aren't matching their words.
I'm literally wondering if you had an audio sync issue on your playback, because I didn't have that.
Okay, maybe. I saw it on the Roku channel, so blame Roku.
Yeah, because I had the disc in, and I'm not going to say every lip matched every word. I was pretty distracted by the CG buffoonery, but I definitely was looking at their faces quite a bit, and I'd never noticed. It was better than Kraven the Hunter in that regard.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I like these two as thieves. I think they're fun main characters to pick the thief class, to make the mages, kind of the rich snobs, and then have the thieves be the heroes of the film, the underdogs. I think it's a good idea. I think Solomon had his mind in the right place and where his place was, and it becomes deathly obvious a little later, is he viewed this as Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, come on. In a really brainstorm idea, let me just remake Star Wars and Indiana Jones and any other Lucas property that I can think of for scene after painful scene.
Yeah, Solomon wrote this film. He is not a credited writer. Apparently, the writers who are credited are script polishers who then, I guess, arbitrated for a lot of credit. But before they were allowed to touch his script, Solomon sat them down to make sure they'd seen this old movie, Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. To make sure they knew what he was going for. But he envisioned this as a trilogy. And yeah, these thieves are our moisture farmer Luke, right? Coming off the backwater planet while dealing with the mystical emperor of Jeremy Irons and his Darth Vader goon of Bruce Payne.
Now, it's always interesting when we see a ripoff surface here, because one could make the case either way. If you love Star Wars, wouldn't you want to see something like Star Wars? Or are you protective of Star Wars, and when players come with half-assed efforts like this, do you want to burn them to the ground? Where are you guys at?
Personally, I'd say the line for me is crappy fanboy movies, right? Where they think they know better than the people that have been making Star Wars or whatever. Like, this is the real Star Wars. And they go out in the woods and shoot for 2 days and come home and whip it up on their computer.
Is that what this is?
Maybe, because since we're already broaching the topic, I was going to bring it up later, but like, I kind of have a special place in my heart for the Star Wars Holiday Special, which is pure crap, right? It's pure, unadulterated crap made by people who weren't even sure what Star Wars was and definitely weren't sure what Star Wars was going to become. So they're just kind of messing around in this world with costumes. And I'm kind of getting that same vibe here. There's a little bit of a charm to the ineptitude that's on screen here.
Okay.
And I used to like Star Wars so much that even bad Star Wars was better than no Star Wars, which is why I really embraced films like The Last Starfighter and things like that. It gave me that Star Wars flavor. Here, by putting it in a fantasy setting and replacing Vader with a guy wearing blue lipstick, I'm getting almost 2 generations away from Star Wars. Because you know what was a Star Wars ripoff? Was the Dolph Lundgren Masters of the Universe movie. And now this feels like a ripoff of Dolph Lundgren's Masters of the Universe. So it feels so far removed. You know, it is to Star Wars what I was to Indiana Jones when I was 12 and my belt was my whip. You know, it can try to be Star Wars all at once, but it is not going to succeed here. Justin Whalin is probably a better actor than Mark Hamill, but his character of Ridley is not written as well as Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I don't like anybody in this cast. I'll just cut to the quick. I don't know how you could. I really don't know how you could. I guess if you like the humor, you'll laugh. And maybe you'll like Marlon Wayans. But when it becomes this rom-com about breaking into the magic school and the mage girl, Marina, catches them and whips them around with a magic lasso while her mentor gets killed by, the blue lipstick guy. It's a meet cute.
Yeah, it is a rom-com in that way. It's kind of weird because we have the Empress, who is sort of Princess Leia-y in that she's royalty, but also we have our Marina here, who's going to be the love interest. Something that I found very interesting, this movie took over a year between the time it was filmed and the time it got released. Like, the ending, which we'll talk about when we get there, was filmed a year later than all of the rest of this stuff. And while he was filming this, a movie came out. He didn't even get a chance to see it. He was too busy working. The Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
And it's just funny to me that he recreated a Queen Amidala down to giving really dull political speeches and didn't even know that Lucas was making that same mistake as he was.
He probably was aware of some of it, right? I mean, even if the movie hadn't come out, there were clips, there were things to give you the indication of how Natalie Portman was going to dial back the emotions. Yeah, the whole thing just comes off to me like, yes, LARPing fanboys that their whole campaign are bits and pieces from movies they love. And I guess that would be okay if they had natural cinematic talent, but I think this movie feels just, it's awful. Just an awful experience to be sitting through.
Yeah, you said laughing. I can't say that Wayans and Whalin ever make me laugh out loud. Early on, I'm coming in with goodwill, and their buffoonery and their merry thieving is entertaining enough, but it's a long movie, and they just don't have enough to hold it all on their own shoulders. You mentioned Marina. I'm not familiar with Zoe McClellan. She was in that TV show Dirty Sexy Money, which I know more for the title than I've never seen a frame of it, and she's done some of those procedural shows on TV.
You don't love JAG? NCIS New Orleans?
I did watch Designated Survivor, and I guess she was in that, but I don't remember her. But she is bad here. She is really overshined by the two leads.
You could create a drinking game of every time she's on screen just staring off blankly at people in front of her. You'd be wasted before this movie's half over.
Yeah, to me, it feels like a Nickelodeon performance. And in fact, the whole thing kind of feels like the Wizards of Waverly Place. Like, she's definitely playing to like a kiddie crowd. And maybe that's not the wrong thing to do. I can't imagine that people that have been playing D&D for decades are going to like this vibe.
Obviously, either they all did, and it's much smaller than I give it credit for, or none of them did, and it's much bigger than you gave it credit for. But yes, we've got Damodar here, who, he's a big guy, but he's just not imposing. He's not that bright. He is no Darth Vader. And Marina is trying to stop the thieves. She lassos them, and we get some, I guess, Two Stooges kind of humor here, as they have to run together while being dragged in this magic lasso. And finally, yeah, there's a brief fight, and Marina teleports them out. And we go to
the cantina.
A cantina scene.
No, a sewer where this movie belongs. We have to pick up people along the way, Wizard of Oz style, Star Wars style. There's an angry, I think he's drunk. There's a dwarf that they find, and all of a sudden they're all sliding down the garbage chute.
Do you guys recognize this actor?
Mm-mm.
So it started bothering me. I'm like, this guy looks so familiar, and I couldn't figure out. He is from Seinfeld. If you guys remember Seinfeld, there was an episode where George was trying to park outside of Jerry's apartment, and he got in an argument with the guy who was trying to come in head first. George was trying to back in.
Yeah.
And that guy ended up knowing Jerry, and he had been calling Jerry a phony behind his back. And it was just, there was something about that actor that like always stuck in my head. And then I could see it through this big red beard and helmet. And I was like, yep, that is him. This is the phony from Seinfeld.
Yeah, his name's Lee Arnenberg. We have reviewed him before. He was Pintel in the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean films. He was one of the skeletal crew of pirates.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I've never seen an episode of Seinfeld. My bad, I suppose. But he is definitely playing it broadly, comedically. Again, I wonder if this is the right tone. You guys are telling me it is. It's right to go for this broad shtick. But I'd be really mad if I played dwarves and this was the representation on screen.
They were going to hire a tall little person. They didn't want to go Lollipop Guild, but they didn't want a normal height person. They got Lee Arnenberg, who's 5'8". I don't think that's at all little person range, as it's taller than me by a few inches. But he convinced them that he may be a little taller than they wanted, but he can act so much better than anybody else that they were looking at to get the role. So we get a tall dwarf eating a lot of chicken at the Mos Eisley Cantina with dancing girls and all kinds of creatures in one place.
Yeah, this is where I do want to give the movie credit, especially in the costuming again, because, I mean, it might not be the best special effects ever, but they did put some love and effort into this. Like, I'm seeing some of these orcs and other guys from covers of Dungeons and Dragon books that I had seen in my childhood come to life. That had to be kind of exciting for guys who had grown up with those books all their life. I mean, I got a little geeked up, and it was just something that was in the back of my head, where it's like, oh yeah, the green orcs. I remember those guys.
Stuart, you grew up with those books. Did you have any jollies from that?
They didn't ring a bell. I didn't recognize the artwork in this production. And I think I've been pretty clear across the board. I'm finding all of this just unpleasant. But yeah, fan filmish and gross and underfunded and without much of its cinematic quality being impressive.
Yeah, it's at this scene where the Star Wars slapped me in the face and I was trying to figure out character motivations. I think we're just supposed to believe that Ridley is smitten with Marina, and that's why a thief promises to help a wannabe mage to follow this map.
Yeah.
But they hate each other, too, because he's against mages, and so I think there's supposed to be some kind of screwball comedy in, that they're bickering as they do it. It's not like he's swept off his feet.
Yeah, I mean, this just seems like a trope out of every 90s sitcom, right? Every character's shipped together, started off hating each other. The Ross and Rachel type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that seems to be his motivation, right? He's got googly eyes for Marina, and the dwarf just happens to be there because food's involved, right?
I can't tell you why anything's really happening. I really honestly can't. At some point I hear somebody say, ever hear of Honor Among Thieves? And I'm like, yes, and I wish I was watching that D&D movie, but we'll get there in a couple weeks.
I'll warn you, it has humor.
I've seen it. I like it.
Oh, okay.
It has humor that's done well, that's funny with actually talented actors.
Okay, I just thought you didn't want any humor in your D&D, and that movie has a lot of similar humor to this movie, I think.
If you think Snails chatting up an elf at the bar is like hilarious, I don't know what to say other than it just feels like watered down Eddie Murphy to me, scene after scene. Yeah, I don't like this crew. Again, I don't know that I can say a compliment. I'm trying really hard to think about something that I didn't hate here. Nope, didn't happen.
Okay, well, I will grouse a little bit about the plotting because they have the map, but now they need the Eye of the Dragon, which is in the center of a maze. It's just complication after complication and not written in a interesting way. It's written in an obligatory, we need to drag this movie out and give them side quests is how it feels. It's video game pacing for all the wrong reasons.
Right, but it continuously is moving, right? Like, I feel like we do not linger very long on any one scene. It's quick from one scene to another.
Shambling, stumbling, yeah. We're following a purple, three-eyed guy to go meet Riff Raff, who's going to send them in something that doesn't look like it would be that challenging. American Gladiator Jr., perhaps, to ride these pendulums and break the spinning blades.
You know what? I'll agree with you, Justin. The one thing I never was during this movie was bored. I may not like this movie, but I'm not checking my watch either. And you say it looks like American Gladiator. Come on, this is 100% like write Steven Spielberg an apology letter and a check, because this maze, let's see, a swinging axe comes out when you put your hand in light. Raiders. A wall closes in on you. Temple of Doom. Oh, we have to step on just the right stones. Last Crusade. Oh no, a door is coming down from the top. Just have to dive while it closes. Raiders. And then he gets to the orb. They put the camera in the exact same location, and the framing is identical to Harrison Ford in Raiders when he gets to the idol, to the point that I literally thought that when Justin Whalin picked up the orb, a big ball would roll down at him.
Yeah, I thought for sure he was going to drop a bag of sand on there to try to counterweight it, just like Indy did.
Yeah, again, we all saw those movies. It's not hard to spot all of this, which again makes me think, what does the director think he's doing? Does he think we don't know?
I think he wasn't prepared for the renaissance Star Wars and Indiana Jones would have around the turn of the millennium. And he thought, those are 20-year-old movies. I can just ape them and I'll be as beloved as them to a generation that won't watch old movies.
Old movies? They weren't that old.
And they were never out of public thought either. I mean, it's not, how did this guy get through film school and not understand the importance of Lucas and Spielberg on film in general?
Yeah, these are some of the most popular movies ever made. Yes, they're within 20 years of their manufacturing. Like, everyone knows. Everyone that's going to see a movie like this knows exactly what you're doing. How embarrassing that you think you're creating a new experience.
How ballsy.
Yeah, it gets really, really bad later on when there's a lightsaber fight in this, but we'll get there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, the next scene, Domodor comes and it's all about, I need the scroll, and it gets kicked around like the beginning of Temple of Doom. I could do it all day. Yes. And Willie, I'm sorry, what's her name? Marina?
Yeah.
Yeah, ends up getting grabbed and it's, you get the girl, Marlon Wayans get the scroll.
And briefly, we get more Jeremy Irons because Damodar has some bad CGI Star Trek II earwig put in him that's turning his head more and more red and putting veins on his head because he lost the map the first time. So now Damodar has his own ticking clock as these things are going to kill him if he doesn't get the rod back to Jeremy Irons in time.
I didn't think they were going to kill him. I thought they were making him loyal, that he couldn't disobey.
No, I thought they were killing him because he keeps turning red and gets those veins on his head.
They definitely hurt, but the ticking clock was either get me the rod back or those things will stay in you forever. If you bring it back, I'll take them out, was his incentive.
Yeah. After he kidnaps Marina and throws her in a dungeon, she's just like, why are you betraying our empress? And his answer is, I have no choice.
But I think he was faking that. I think he was trying to get sympathy from Marina. And when that doesn't work, he then is going to suck the information he wants out of her by using those ear things to go in her ear. And I felt some secondhand embarrassment when on the director's commentary, Solomon is like, well, I wanted to take that interrogation scene in Star Wars, but make it more explicit and show the interrogation instead of just seeing the droid come into the room and then cutting away. He thought this was scarier than Star Wars.
Oof. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you've got a phobia of ear mites sucking away your brain for a couple minutes, then yeah, that's quite the thing.
I feel them. I feel them gnawing at me now.
Mm-hmm. But once again, if you don't have the budget for the CGI, maybe you have to second guess some of your decisions here.
Or you lean into the fact that this is all very cheap looking and it can kind of be like a Mighty Morphin cutesy thing, right? Like you can make it for kids and just wink that you're making junk.
Yeah.
Ray Harryhausen, just it could be a part of the fun if you had the right directorial sensibility. But yes, the weird thing is we're being given these second-rate efforts, and I think, unironically, the only comedy that I see coming is from Marlon.
Yeah, certainly there's none coming from our new character because once Marina gets kidnapped, we need our dose of estrogen to come from Norda, who is a tracker who was sent to follow them. And then we were told Damodar is following her, so he's tracking the tracker, but he got there ahead of her. But now she's going to capture Whalin and Wayans, and Norda, this Kristen Wilson, is also really, really bad at acting. I don't know if this is what she thinks elves act like, or if this is just what she thinks acting is.
No, she thinks she's a cop. That's what she's doing. She's being a cop here. But after she captures him, she walks off, and I'm like, oh no, she's going to call it into the station, isn't she? And she does. She gets a little magic mirror spell and calls the Empress and has a little magic conversation via the ether or however they're talking. And I'm like, she is literally just copping this entire gig here. She thinks she's a sheriff in this fantasy world.
Yeah, she's definitely the straight man. And I think that, again, it's so that Marlon can play off her and be like, I'll take an aging potion. I'll grow up and be what you need because he's 23 and she's like 234.
Yeah, I thought they would have, first of all, more chemistry. They have no chemistry. Marlon Wayans is trying, but she's not having any of it. So I don't know whether I'm supposed to think his game is bad.
It is.
Or if that she's actually just playing it cool, but might be into him a little bit. I can't tell, but they're not going to have a whole lot of time together because Norda's going to realize she's on their side. They're going to go and try to rescue Marina. And then the one moment of, oh my God, that is cool, hit me. It didn't last. But when they go to the castle and there's beholders all around, that was the one creature I very specifically remember seeing a drawing of in one of your books, Stuart. And it was so cool looking, it imprinted on me at a young age. So even though I've never seen one since I was 7, I was like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I was pointing at the screen like, beholders, beholders. And then I went, oh shit, they look like ass.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the experience I had when they were at the bar. I mean, seeing some of those characters brought back memories from being a child and not even being into Dungeons and Dragons at the time, but it was something that was tattooed in my brain. And this scene also, I think, leads to one of the cooler special effects. And to me, to my knowledge, it might be original. It doesn't seem to be something ripped off unless I'm unaware of it. But inside of Damodor's room, he has a quicksand carpet that looked pretty darn convincing. I thought that was kind of a neat effect.
Yeah, I remember that being used in the campaign once. Again, I feel like all of this is stuff that you can expect to see in modules. This is studied. Unlike last week, where we had someone that never would have rolled an 8-sided dice, this is someone that, again, is spending so much time thinking about what was in the modules and is letting Lucasfilm fill in the rest.
Yeah, it's really lazy. But I didn't remember from 25 years ago, and I was shocked watching it this time, that Snail is going to take a stand against Damodar and pull out a knife, and he's going to get stabbed in the back and thrown off a tower. I didn't see the death of Marlon Wayans coming in this movie. I thought, you don't kill the comic relief.
You don't kill anybody. That's not the tone of this movie.
Correct.
Right? Like, completely out of character for this entire picture to have one of your main characters die. But now that you said it, Arnie, I bet you his contract was up and he had to get back to New York.
I don't know. Then there's also just the cliche about the black guy always dies first, right? I mean, he's expendable because we have two thieves and we'd rather follow the white boy than the black guy. And so, yes, Marlon Wayans is out of it. Yeah, I agree. Tonally, what are you doing here? Like, and they spin around him and just linger on his corpse. Now, of course, they're going to undo this, but I also just think, yeah, this was cruel. If this was supposed to be an Obi-Wan moment, miscalculation.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking Obi-Wan because of Phantom Menace. I was kind of thinking Qui-Gon, how Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon started the mission together and Qui-Gon got killed. But I'm sorry, this guy wearing blue lipstick is no Darth Maul.
Mm-mm. And also, it's at this point where I start to question, do I even know the rules of this realm and this movie universe? Like, is he dead? Like, is there a spell that they can just quickly cast and bring him back right away? Or what? I don't know. Like, is this supposed to be a heavy moment? Well, the movie doesn't tell me.
Ridley's hurt. We saw for a moment that the sword was driven into his shoulder. And I did have one geek out moment, just because I have not seen Tom Baker since he stopped playing the Fourth Doctor. But he took the scarf off and became the elf that heals this main character when he's taken to a tree full of candles, or I should say a bat painting.
Yeah, I knew he was in this just because I'd looked at the cast list and I recognized his name. I was surprised. I didn't know how he was so young during Doctor Who. He seemed so old to me when I was 9. He's still alive. I figured he was long dead, but he's alive as of this recording. But he is unrecognizable to me, though. I just realized this had to be him because the other guy was Riff Raff from Rocky Horror, so this guy had to be Tom Baker.
No, I recognized him instantly. Again, I adored his years specifically of the Doctor Who. I didn't watch any of the later stuff, really, or any of the earlier stuff. He is my Doctor Who, so I'm going to recognize him in this. He's pretty good. Probably the best actor here when he does this mumbo jumbo and brings back this guy that I don't care whether he lives or dies. And we can now finally have the characters kiss, because I guess that's what's important.
Well, where are we now, guys? We're in the Ewok village. We're up in the trees with the same sound effects from Endor playing in the background.
Yeah.
And they had a sex scene that they filmed but cut in this where they decided that was the wrong beat to play for this. They can play romance but can't have these two naked in bed together.
That would be weird. But again, tonally, this movie is, this scene goes on forever. They're giving speeches about how she's now convinced that the Empress is right because she's fallen in love with a human being. None of this is earned, right? I mean, none of this happened over the course of their adventure.
Yeah, I wish the characters had better motivation other than, you kind of just go along with what the Dungeon Master tells you when you're one of the players.
Yeah.
You go on the campaign the Dungeon Master has laid out for you. One time I was a total dick in a role-playing game, and I just was like, you want us all to go straight, I'm going left. And really fucked up the game. But here, these characters are doing what they're doing because it's what they're told to do.
Yep, somebody rolled an 11 and now they're in love.
Ugh. Anyway, it's pretty much close to the end of the movie. We cut back to Thora Birch. Her 3 days are up, and she's not giving up the scepter, so it's war. I'm not sure. There's talk of war, and half the mages are going to side with Jeremy Irons, and I guess the other half are going to be with her when she gets on golden dragons to go kick ass.
Oh, I didn't think she had any mages with her. I gotta be honest, I'm starting to check out, but I thought it was literally dragons versus mages. All the mages on one side, and all she had was her scepters and the dragons. And where these peasants are, who she's fighting for, none of them came to her aid.
Some people disappear, like in this scene where she's talking to the council, some people leave with her. Now, no, they're not on the dragons, but that's just because the animators can't fix that. My sense is that it's a split kingdom.
Sure.
And so, yes, Ridley, he gets a sword from two Phantom of the Opera fans that are just some two random people just standing in a forest that say, here, have a sword. And then he goes and walks through a cave and nobody else can follow him because there are force fields that pop up. And he eventually is confronted with some skeleton who says, here, have a scepter, but know that it will turn you evil.
Right, yeah. This scene almost reminded me of Return to Oz. There was a room in that movie where people who guessed wrong turned into a piece of furniture or something, or an object in this treasure room, but it felt very similar to that.
I'm thinking Chuck E. Cheese myself.
And I was thinking The Last Crusade, because this treasure room reminded me of all the opulent cups that Indiana Jones has to pick from to figure out which cup was his, and the way that Ridley starts to steal the gold, but then puts it back and says, sorry, Snails, like he's besmirching Snails' memory by not thieving it. But that reminded me of like Indiana Jones's character evolution, how he was starting off for fortune and glory and ends up trying to get stuff for a museum.
Right. Or even Goonies, right? Like Mikey knew that you couldn't take certain things out of the room. But anyway, a pretty decent practical effect here, right? A talking skeleton who seems like it's going to be a challenge of some sort. He's going to have to fight him. But the skeleton just says a few words and he's like, all right, here, you have the rod.
Yeah, he's like, anyone who wields the power of the rod will suffer a horrible fate, for its evil cannot be undone unless the spell is broken. How do I break the spell? That you must discover. Nobody discovers it.
Well, he breaks the scepter, but we'll get there as we're getting to this climax. Jeremy Irons is at first shitting himself because the sky is full of gold dragons and Thora Birch is wearing chainmail and looking like she's winning. But then Domodor grabs the scepter from Ridley, brings it to him, and now he can command red dragons. I can't tell the difference between the two dragons. It's just, I guess one is a slightly lighter shade, but they're not able to do this, guys. They can't pull this off.
I could tell a color difference. They all look like shit, though.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm learning from bonus materials on the disc that red dragons are even stronger than gold dragons in the game. So if you know the game, you should know the gold dragons are screwed now.
Yeah, I do remember the red dragon being the biggest one.
But visually, it's all the same model, right? Like, there's not a difference between any of these dragons other than the color they shaded it.
No. Avert your eyes. It's painful.
But at least in the climax, we get Jeremy Irons again, because this movie has really lacked for Irons. If Jeremy Irons didn't have Damodar, if Jeremy Irons just went out and did his own dirty work, I think this movie would be so much better, because Damodar is a charisma vortex, and I'm loving whatever it is. It's not acting, it's something else entirely. But whatever Jeremy Irons is doing, I want more of it in my life.
Yeah, drugs, probably cocaine.
Enough to make you want to buy a castle?
It's probably a great after party.
And yeah, when Ridley comes out with the rod, Damodar is there and has captured everybody, and Ridley's going to give him the rod for his friend's freedom. Of course, Damodar doesn't free them once he gets the rod, and then the captives free themselves. Like, the elf is just able to overpower his captors. Nora pulls two knives and stabs her own captors. Why didn't they do that before giving up the rod if they could defeat their captors so easily?
Because it wasn't in the script yet. We need it to be a bigger moment.
Well, the big moment is that Ridley goes through the portal after Damodar so that he's at the top of the tower with the mages during this fight. And we're going to get a sword fight between Ridley and Damodar, or should I say between Luke and Vader, because when their swords connect, yellow lightning flashes, Ridley's sword glows blue, Damodar's sword glows red. I mean, it couldn't be more, well, really more Masters of the Universe.
I'm not like you. Yeah, I mean, all of this stuff is so poor, but yes, Ridley is supposedly tempted by the dark side for, I don't know, what you think, about 15 seconds?
Yeah.
And then he breaks the scepter and he's fine.
And Ridley defeats Damodar by doing this flip, this backflip, like Mikey from Life cereal wall walking backflip. I'm like, if he had this agility level, why didn't we see it any other time in the movie?
Yeah, we don't see his skill set in very set up scenes where he could be using it.
He was flipping around a little bit in the maze. I'll tell him that.
His shoulder rolling, yeah.
Yeah, that felt different to me. This felt like some real gymnastic stuff. And then because Damodar loses and our heroes won't kill anyone, the way Luke didn't kill Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi, then Profian is going to stab Damodar and throw him off the tower, just like Damodar did to Snails. Isn't that poetic justice? And again, I'm getting Masters of the Universe because now Profian has a big scepter, the way Skeletor had a scepter and He-Man had a sword, and Jeremy Irons completely disarms Ridley very easily.
Yeah, and aren't you all waiting for the revelation that Profian is his father? Like, I thought for sure that was coming.
Yes, for real. That would be hilarious. That's the only thing they didn't do, frankly.
They might have been saving it for the sequel because the director was talking about how he had plot strands he'd left to pick up in part 2.
Oh, yeah. And that reveal isn't until part 2 in Star Wars, so...
And even though Profian does lose and the Empress has a gold dragon eat him, it's Dungeons and Dragons, right? Characters can always come back.
I don't think Jeremy Irons is coming back. He got his castle. But apparently Marlon Wayans is coming back. Help me out with this part.
This is the ending they filmed a year after the rest of the movie. The original ending they put on the DVD as an extra was Justin Whalin at Snails' grave giving a talk about how he was a hero, and then Justin Whalin walks off into the sunset and Snails is dead, and that's the end. No hints of new adventures or anything. And Solomon decided that can't be the ending, so they filmed a second ending where Empress Savina destroys her rod and proclaims the heroes champions of the throne. And according to Solomon, this was so bad he wouldn't even put it on the DVD. He doesn't want anyone to see that ending.
Thora Birch, was that the problem? Breaking anything?
Yeah, God forbid she break a smile or do anything to act in this movie.
Right, yeah. Break that flat expression on her face.
So finally, the ending they go with is this refilmed ending, which is a lot like the one on the DVD, where Justin Whalin is at Snails' grave, but now somehow Norda knows that Snails is coming back from the dead or something, and we're going to teleport away in fairy dust to go see him.
Y'all tell me how that goes. Not going with you.
We got a sequel to this to discuss next week. Marlon Wayans isn't in it, but maybe Snails is. So Justin, Stuart, do you recommend Dungeons and Dragons? Justin.
All right, so gauntlet's off now, right? We've been ripping on this movie, and Stuart, I know you've been hard on it and kind of been sticking up for it here and there, but I do feel everything you were criticizing this movie for. It's not a good movie. It really isn't. However, I did find some charm in it, right? Like, I feel like it's the perfect mix of hubris and ineptitude and some know-how and a whole bunch of actors who aren't sure what movie they're in. Every one of them's in a different movie and playing a different role to a different director. And to be honest with you, it's just enough kitsch and just enough love sprinkled in there that it casts a little bit of a spell on me. This is a movie that I could sit down again and watch in a couple years and laugh at how bad it is and have a good time with it. Because, like we said earlier, it is fast-paced. It's rarely ever boring. There's a few times where it slows down and there's some exposition scenes and there's a lot of techno-babble throughout. But if you just take it for what's on screen, I think you could have a good, bad movie night with this movie. So for that reason, I'm going to give this movie a brown arrow. I think it has some fun stuff for you if you're not expecting Game of Thrones.
Stuart.
Only Jeremy Irons, I would say. I think Jeremy Irons is there for the bad arrowness, and I was shocked to learn that he was not up for a Razzie for this. I guess it was the same year as Battlefield Earth, who could compete. But yeah, this movie was overlooked as a bad movie, and I think Jeremy Irons did his best to try to sell that point. But please cast a protection spell to prevent entertainment like this from passing before my eyes. Like, I thought we were done with Uwe Boll, and now we have new Uwe Boll. Courtney Solomon, I wouldn't want to hang and do a D&D campaign with him. I wouldn't trust him for a night at the comic book shop and some lead figures. No, this is a Lucasfilm fanboy exercise that has very little to do with Dungeons and Dragons besides, I guess, badly trying to evoke the things that you might know from manuals. You don't want to see it this way. You really don't. The only person that needs to see this movie is Tom Hanks, because he might actually wake from his delusion that he had last week of wanting to live in a fantasy world. This will cure you of that right quick. I want nothing more to do with this Dungeons and Dragons world.
Yeah, this movie is a crit fail. Dungeon Master Courtney Solomon may have rolled high in persuasion to land these film rights, but his storytelling and directing skills did not level up enough to run a campaign of this magnitude. That said, I think he assembled a solid party. Lead Sean Whalins and Marlon Wayans have high charisma. Their chemistry makes them easy to root for. And Jeremy Irons, level 20 in scene chewing. They play their roles in amusing ways, but even the best adventurers can't carry a broken campaign. And the best loot in this dungeon is Justin Kane Burnett's score. His rousing, epic soundtrack is worthy of a better film, one that actually earns its Star Wars or Indiana Jones ambitions. And I still will stand by cinematographer Douglas Milsom deserves some credit for making this low-budget quest look grander than it should, aided by striking prog locations and really well-done lighting. But here's where the Griffin crashes. Solomon's ambitions were dragon-sized, but with his budget slashed from $100 million to $30 million, he needed to adjust the script accordingly. Instead, we get these abysmal special effects, a weak villain swap where Bruce Paynes is our on-screen baddie because they can't afford irons, and supporting actors delivering lines with the enthusiasm of a fatigued bard. Even Thora Birch, fresh off American Beauty, is as wooden as a mimic in disguise. And worse still, this script is the film's crux of doom. It's ironic that Solomon wanted to be George Lucas so badly that he anticipated and repeated Phantom Menace's worst mistakes. An uninspiring young ruler, tedious political speeches, unclear stakes. And sure, we're told the Empress fights for equality, but I don't know if she's competent. Irons makes for a fantastic villain, but he's rolling with advantage against a script that fails to establish why we should care. So in the end, the die lands on not recommend. There's bright spots in this slog, and I can respect the effort of those who brought their A-game, but even the best party members can't salvage a doomed campaign. Don't watch this.
Yeah. You know what? It should have been called out maybe at the top. Fantasy is not my thing. I don't know if it's your guys' thing. I've never heard you guys really go apeshit for fantasy films. But, you know, anything we've covered, with the exception of In the Name of the King, has been better in this genre than this, right? And it's so sad to know that, like, 1 year later, Peter Jackson coming out there, this thing just gets wiped away. Why would you even make a sequel? Why would you want to remind people that this existed after Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, the gauntlet definitely gets thrown down, and there's really no reason to pick back up in this world.
And yet we are. Next week, something called The Wrath of the Dragon God is coming our way, and it's a direct sequel with Dumbledore still chugging away, apparently. The only returning cast member.
Yeah, it came out direct to video in 2005, and why?
Sci-Fi Channel.
But doesn't Sci-Fi Channel just look at what's hot in theaters and make that? Like, you know, Jurassic Park is working, so they do, like,
Dino Croc or whatever that shit is. Crustaceous Park.
Yeah, something like that, you know? Like, they'll always do those cheap ripoffs right there. So that's why they would make a fantasy movie in the wake of Lord of the Rings, and Dungeons & Dragons is still a name. I mean, a name that had been around for 25 years by the time this movie came out. This movie is not even a chink in its armor.
You know what? Going to Sci-Fi Channel might be a step up from what I just sat through. I'm cautiously optimistic that it will be a better kind of bad.
Well, we gotta roll those dice.
Yeah, we'll do that next week. In the meantime, this Friday, we are going back to the back half of our Hacker movie retrospective series we've already reviewed. Available right now if you donate at gold level. War Games, Sneakers, The Net, and Hackers. And this Friday, we're doing the first Hacker film we're covering from the 21st century, Antitrust.
Yeah, Tim Robbins is Bill Gates, and he's going to take over the world unless Ryan Phillippe stops him on a Mac or something. I don't really know what happens, but I remember it is crazy.
I watched it. I remember it being like evil Bill Gates, or should I just say Bill Gates on screen. We will be covering that Friday. If you donate, find out all the details at nowplayingpodcast.com/donate. And every penny you donate helps keep this show going, and we thank you for it. And Justin, Stuart, thank you for role-playing with me. Now it's time to pick up the pieces and go home.
And so, we played the game again, for one last time. It didn't matter that there were no maps, or dice, or no monsters. Pardew saw the monsters. We did not. We saw nothing but the death of hope, and the loss of our friend. And so we played the game until the sun began to set, and all the monsters were dead.
Thank you for listening to this Now Playing Podcast movie review.
I've enjoyed our little chat, but now it's your time to die.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
A wonderful performance.
Help us spread the word about this show by leaving a 5-star review on Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, or your podcast store of choice.
This I give you now, trusting that you'll protect it with your very life.
Want more reviews like this one? In the archives section of nowplayingpodcast.com, you'll find more than 1,000 in-depth movie reviews from our panel of hosts.
Welcome to the Adventurer's Vault.
On our site, you can hear reviews for every installment in the world's biggest film franchises, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men, James Bond, Middle-earth, Jurassic Park, Fast and Furious, and Transformers.
Are you listening to me? All I do is listen.
Plus, we have individual movie reviews, such as Titanic, E.T., Inception, Big Hero 6, Ready Player One, Pulp Fiction, Apocalypse Now, Dr. Strangelove, and hundreds more.
Has anyone ever finished it before?
No. They all died trying.
And come back to nowplayingpodcast.com next Tuesday for another all-new movie review podcast.
Nothing can keep me from it.
Support from listeners like you keeps Now Playing Podcast on the air.
Give me some food and I'll give you a prize.
You can donate directly by tapping the support button at nowplayingpodcast.com.
We are you gotta get. And right about now, we gotta get paid.
And you can join our crowdfunding campaign for early access to new episodes, exclusive reviews, and bonus reviews available for a one-time contribution.
This isn't about gold, it's about saving our empire.
Need more Now Playing? Subscribe to our In Focus weekly newsletter for exclusive digital download giveaways, celebrity interviews, behind-the-scenes insights, and more. Sign up through the subscribe page on our website and get it delivered to your inbox every Friday.
If you wish to join the others in death, insert your name below and I will notify your kin.
You can also compare notes with us on Letterboxd. Go to letterboxd.com/nowplaying.
You may take my hand, and I will lead you. I'll tell you right now, I'm not taking his hand.
And follow Now Playing on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our YouTube channel.
Follow me, I know the way.
Now Playing Podcast is produced by Arnie Carvalho.
Giving birth to this nightmare is my most coveted dream.
Associate produced by Jason Latham.
I'm a god and a lord. I am really doing all right.
Now Playing is edited by Santiago and Arnie.
So we're the cleaning crew.
Cleanup crew's more like it.
Now Playing credits read by Brock.
You will speak only when spoken to.
Speak when spoken to, my ass.
The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual hosts and may not reflect the views of Venganza Media Incorporated.
A lot of dwarves are afraid to show their true feelings. I'm not, okay?
Venganza Media Incorporated is not affiliated with, and this podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by any entity that created the film analyzed herein.
You may have forsworn your oath, but your oath hasn't forsworn you. Just because that sentence is symmetrical doesn't make it not nonsense.
All movie clips and music included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review, and no infringement is intended.
Yeah, well, have you ever heard of honor amongst thieves? We might live outside the law, but we respect each other.
Now Playing Podcast is an exclusive trademark of and may not be used without the express written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated.
The dark will never triumph, as long as the light inside me prevails.
Now Playing is a Venganza Media production, copyright 2025, and no part of this show may be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without the written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated. All rights reserved.
The most frightening monsters are the ones that exist in our minds.
Perlamon Tergatis. Marlon Wayans, I mean, he was pretty decently sized. At least the Wayans brothers were, right? I was aware of I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, and In Living Color, right? So, I mean, that was pretty big around this time, or maybe on the downside of it.
Like, he was in White Chicks, you know what I mean? Like, he was in the bad ones. Scary movie.
Scary movies, but those came later.
White Chicks? I'm not going to let you call White Chicks the bad one. Maybe we can agree on Little Man, but White Chicks has its appeal, man.
Okay. I haven't seen it, so you got me there. I've seen enough to know that I wouldn't like it.
Perlamon Tergatis.
And so, yes, Marlon Brando is out of it, and...
Marlon Brando?
Marlon Wayans. Boy, he would be a great inclusion to this. He could have been a beholder.
Perlamon Tergatis.
Still alive. I figured he was long dead, but he's alive as of this recording. Although it's been a bad week, and might not be alive by the time the recording comes out.
Perlamon Tergatis.